Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us on the Talk HR UK podcast channel once more. I think this is now going to be episode 11, so it's been a really incredibly both intense but enjoyable process at the moment. I think between Simon and I, we've sort of dished out 7 odd podcasts each. Some of them are still due to hit the market. This will be number 11. So, just as a quick reminder, so obviously my name is Damien, part of the Alexander Lloyd team. We specialise within HR recruitment, so of course if you have any sort of queries, questions, concerns, get in touch, we're happy to help out. More importantly, today we're going to be talking about a really topical conversation regarding women within insurance, and my esteemed guest is Jo McGowan. Jo is the HR Director for First Central. First Central are a leading insurance business. They've got an incredible journey, so we're going to find out more from Jo about what's happening in the organisation. And then we'll obviously tackle the topical women within insurance. Jo, just for the purposes of our listeners, do you mind just giving us a little bit of the backstory to yourself and also how have you guys coped in COVID?
Of course, and thank you very much for having me here today, and hello everyone. So as you said, I'm Jo McGowan, HR Director at First Central. For those of you who haven't heard of us, we're a motor insurance company launched in 2008. So compared to a lot of the other big motor insurers, we're fairly new to the market. We've got about 680,000 customers now and growing at quite a rapid rate, which is great to be part of. My kind of journey is I've been at First Central for all of those 12 years. So I joined First Central in August 2008, and we actually sold our first policy in the October 2008. So those first 4 months, I'd say, were pretty frantic, some interesting kind of things I was getting involved in, things I've never done before kind of in my career, but it's great to be sort of that I have been there the whole time. And then prior to First Central, I worked at Hastings Direct in their HR team. So I've always worked in insurance and in financial services. And in relation to your question on COVID, I think it's been a difficult year for everyone, I'd say. So we've actually been really lucky that I'd say that actually, and I think a lot of that is down to our employees, our colleagues, that the resilience and agility they've shown during this year has just been absolutely kind of exemplary. So back to cast our minds back to kind of March when all this kicked off. We were quite kind of at the forefront, so we started realizing that this was coming. And I think before that we do lots of business continuity testing, planning, but I think we never actually planned for a pandemic. I don't think many kind of particularly kind of insurance companies had planned to that extent. But when kind of news of COVID was coming, we started already doing some tests around actually could all our people work from home if they had to. So even we've got a big claims department in Manchester. We said one day everybody in Manchester has to work from home to really test did the network work, and actually that showed us a lot of issues that we then could fix before actually we went into proper lockdown. So things such as that, being ahead of the game, were really kind of beneficial for us. And I think during COVID, the other thing we've been really keen on is we operate what we call a 4 C's framework. So everything we do, and we introduced this last year, everything we do, we look at it from the perspective of what does that mean for our colleagues? What does it mean for our customers? What does it mean for our local communities? And therefore, what does that mean for our company? And actually having that framework has been really useful during COVID, because all the time, every decision we were making, we were looking back, okay, how would that impact our customers, or what more could we do for our vulnerable customers? How are our colleagues doing? How do we need to communicate more to them? So actually that was constantly testing our thinking and making sure we weren't just solely focused on customers or something like that, and forgetting those other 4 C's. So again, that's been really beneficial, and so it's great that we've had that framework in place. So overall, I'd say it's been testing, challenging, as a lot of other companies and HR departments I think have gone through the same kind of challenging times. But actually, we've been able to continue growing the business, servicing the customers, and actually we've delivered a lot during that period, which is again real testament to our teams internally.
I think just before we started the recording session, we were just talking about your talent management program and something that you run annually, and it's been running for the last couple of years, which I think is amazing. But just the fact that you as an organization, as a team, as a business, are still able to look at that really positive, valuable sessions and development areas, as opposed to, unfortunately, the harsh reality of the market is so many people are having to either firefight, consolidate, go through redundancies, and it's tough. But your story is slightly different than everybody else, which is clearly a testament to your business.
Yeah, as you say, so you say a lot of companies have gone through some really challenging, difficult times, and I do really feel for those companies. And during this time, we've been able to carry on kind of growing. And one of the biggest challenges we had was really quickly having to recruit and train people remotely. So so even I think since March, we've filled about 200 vacancies still
Wow.
during that time. So the L&D teams had to really quickly think about, right, normally we would have a classroom of 15 new starters that would be training them on our processes and all of that. Suddenly being able to have to get laptops out, train them remotely, and all of that. But I think it has also shown that actually making some of these decisions, I think going forward, the things people learn from this is around being bold. So
Yeah.
we've talked about quite a while for what's the new flexible working look like, because we've been thinking about home working anyway, and we've had some reservations around could it work, how would it work. Whereas I think now, because we've had to do it, it's proved it does work. So I think that's one thing we've massively learned kind of going forwards around be a bit bolder in some of those decisions that we need to make.
I love that. I love. I can't believe how many highs you've gone through. But I'm hoping that some of our learning and development listeners will be quite excited about what you're talking about, because that is going to be the next phase for us. L&D and recruitment, or TA functions internally, they're the two areas that were probably hit hardest during this pandemic, and it gives them a little bit of hope that when businesses start hiring, start growing, and start thinking about how they do their onboarding experience through to the learning, the training and support, they're going to have a need again, and hopefully they'll be back in demand for the market.
Yeah, definitely agree. I think there is going to be that need, and some of it's then also looking at how can we do things kind of digitally going forward. So that's something we're also looking at. What does that blended learning kind of look like as well? So definitely some things we take out of kind of the COVID situation going forward in that sense.
There's so much I could talk to you and ask you regarding digital L&D, but that's not the topic of today. The whole reason why we're collaborating is to talk about, unfortunately, the real issue that's out there that we face at the moment, and that's this distinct lack of women within insurance. And this is something clearly you're really, really passionate about. It's something I saw on your website.
Yeah, so I think this is something which personally I'm really passionate about, and as a business we're also really passionate about. And I'd probably kind of start this conversation by saying we're at no means kind of leading the way on this at all. Really, there's actually we've recognised this as an area that we need to focus on, same as a lot of other insurance companies. So there's a lot of good stuff that we're doing and looking at, and again, as I said, it's something which I'm really personally passionate about.
I guess we spoke earlier about the introduction to yourself, and you've only ever really worked within the insurance sector. Why did you choose insurance? How did this kind of manifest, and where's the passion about, I guess, FS or insurance?
So I'm not going to lie, I fell into insurance. So I did actually work at Hastings Direct when I was 16 on the calls, on the phones, taking calls to customer service, went to university, got offered then a role to come back into HR. So I have to say it wasn't a decision I consciously made. And I think as you speak to a lot of people, they do have gone through a similar journey, kind of didn't actually choose insurance but kind of fell into it. But I do think, and I know one of the conversations we've had before is around why do we think there's so few females in insurance, and I do think it is massively getting better, but I think some of the perceptions probably used to be that it was quite a male dominated industry. And I think in terms of that's because it was perceived that to get on in that industry, it was working long hours, probably a bit more of a kind of a culture which was more kind of driven and a bit of a kind of power culture. And I think that's a kind of wider industry challenge. But again, I do say I think that has massively changed over the years. So you even see companies now are so much more focused on the customer outcomes, the customer journey, doing the right kind of thing. So I think that cultural piece is changing. But I do, and also I think the other reason why there's less females in the kind of functional services industry also comes back to a lot of the roles in those industry, those more kind of mathematical, or you need that kind of element. And it comes back to at school, we all know that girls don't naturally tend to gravitate towards those kind of science, technology, engineering and maths kind of subjects. So I think all of that put together is why there's less females kind of in the industry or being developed and promoted at those senior levels in the industry.
So do you think that there's a real, there's got to be a real focus that actually we need to almost get it right from an education perspective and re-educate? So is there an obligation, do you think, between insurance businesses going into the schools, if it's at that level, and actually starting to explain and sell and also re-educate maybe teachers in the curriculum about the positives?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and that is something which we are looking to do actually, is build those relationships with some local schools, colleges and universities to, as you say, really educate people around actually a career in insurance. And as I said, I've only been in insurance, but I've had a great career and I'm still loving my career, and I don't see myself leaving insurance for any time soon. So it's around educating those people around what are those careers in the insurance industry. I think people don't see it as being a particularly kind of savvy, forward-thinking industry, but actually if you look at how much technology changes there are, digital, all that's focus on the customer, all of that's massively changing in the insurance industry. So I think there's some really exciting careers that we can get youngsters more kind of excited about, particularly things such as graduate schemes, apprentices. So that's definitely something we as a company are looking at. And I do know a lot of other insurance companies are looking at that. And also I think the insurance industry as a whole have a part to play in this. Which is really promises where you look at things such as there's the Women in Finance Charter, which was set up a few years ago, and there's most of the big kind of insurance companies have signed up for that. We've signed up for that now. So it does show that companies are recognising this is a challenge in our industry and we need to do something about it. But something I'm really passionate about, and whenever I talk about this kind of topic, is around, I don't want this just to be something people are focusing on just hitting a target for the sake of hitting that target.
Yeah.
That actually it should be around, okay, what's the benefits of having a diverse leadership team or diverse even workforce, and people are focusing on those benefits, not just, right, I want to have 30% females on my board just because that looks good, but actually what's that diversity? How do you create that culture where you can be yourself, bring your whole self to work? That's the bit I'm really kind of passionate and excited about. And again, and that's something we're looking at as a company.
I'm intrigued. How would you sort of go about measuring some of the tangibles and intangibles within that? When do you say, pat ourselves on the back, we're doing a great job?
So we're actually just about to, so we do an annual colleague survey, and we also do quarterly pulse surveys, and our quarterly Q3 pulse survey is coming out shortly. And in that, we've just included some general questions around, do you feel the culture at First Central is inclusive? Do you feel you can bring your true self to work? So they're quite kind of deep questions, but really that's just to get a bit of a feel of actually, do we have a kind of a challenge from that culture point of view? And what we would then want to do is do some actual focus groups with our employees to drill into that even more kind of detail around actually, okay, if a certain business area or whatever has said that but they don't feel the culture is inclusive, why do they feel that? What are the examples they're seeing, hearing, feeling? What can we do about that? So it is quite a difficult thing because culture is always hard to measure, and that's why I think things such as those pulse surveys are good, because they only give you a snippet, but it gives you something you can then go and drill down further into by having true, honest conversations. So we've got those questions coming out shortly, and then also I think there's then the more hard data fact, which is around, okay, what does your diversity look like? And again, not every employee wants to answer some of those questions, but we are going to encourage our employees to let us know what is their background. So again, we can look at, have we got any kind of areas we need to focus more on to make sure we are really representing our local communities and our customer base as a whole.
No, absolutely. Okay, I love that. I think it's really, really positive, refreshing, and it's nice to have that constant feedback, because, like you say, you get an indicator of where they are in terms of the audience in the business. So I think about insurance, and I do unfortunately still think of, I can remember the times when I first came into recruitment 10 years ago, just how boyish, how laddish insurance is, and it was almost like that was the culture then. But I'm seeing a difference now, and you mentioned something earlier about sort of digital disruption. That's a huge theme across all insurance businesses, and everybody wants to be innovators in what you do. So what are the sort of exciting things that you think the insurance sector offers, and particularly then obviously enabling the female population to want to go, that sounds great, I want to be a part of that?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple parts. I think you say that the digital piece is key. So it's always looking at, and I think a lot of that is driven by our customers. So I think even if I think about if I've got something I need to change on my car insurance or want to renew, I'd prefer to do it online or do it via web chat or just do it in the most slick way possible. So really, I think the insurance industry is catching up with actually what the customer wants rather than kind of the industry driving that. So I think customers want that sort of digital, slick way of processes being done, but that does create quite a lot of exciting opportunities for new careers, new roles, new ways for people to learn new skills. So I think there's that. I also think that the customer piece, so customers' expectations now about anything are always kind of changing, and I think as customers and employees, I think we expect more and more of kind of companies that we're involved with. And again, I think the industry is massively looking at that and thinking about, okay, how can we be a really positive company, not just you get your insurance renewal every year, we only speak to you at renewal, you get a standard kind of product. How can we make that whole journey much more engaging? And then the thing I'm hugely passionate about is kind of colleague experience and what employees are looking for, and how do you always make sure you're kind of at the forefront of that, because there are certain roles which are becoming harder and harder to recruit for, and you guys would see it, but there are those certain, that kind of war for talent in certain roles. So it's around actually as a company, how can we offer a really compelling colleague experience, employee experience, where people want to come and work at First Central and want to stay here.
I'm really pleased that you kind of led to also your engagement with suppliers. And I also think that, certainly from a recruitment perspective, and all recruitment companies will say that they're inclusive and they work with diverse shortlists and everything else, which is best practice, is absolutely what has to happen. Now, in reality, how much effort does somebody as a recruiter go through to make sure that they are servicing their clients? So how do you manage your suppliers? How do you make sure that they fulfill their obligations rather than just tick box exercises that sometimes may happen?
Yes, I think for us, the key bit is having that really kind of, I'd probably say, deep relationship with your suppliers. So you actually, they truly know what the culture is, what we're driving for, what our values are, and therefore, if you think about it from a recruitment point of view, they're finding individuals that align to that, and we'd want to work with suppliers in the same way. So it's not just those suppliers that, as you say, are doing it for a tick box. They're doing it because we genuinely want to get a balanced shortlist. And I also think actually recruitment agencies do have a big part to play in this, because I think one of the reasons there isn't so many female leaders in the insurance industry is where in the past, and it does still happen, is that when you recruit a new role, people just go to their own network. And typically your network will be kind of like-minded, similar individuals. So actually you're not then widening the net, looking at, okay, how do we increase that diversity, because you're just looking at who is within your network, rather than actually looking at, okay, who else is out there in the market. It doesn't even always have to be in the insurance market either. Actually, let's bring in some individuals that you could train up on the product knowledge, but actually they have some of the other skills and behaviors that you would want.
It's that unconscious bias, isn't it? I think hiring managers need to be constantly reminded, because it's so easy to fall into habits. And then, of course, even as recruiters, we need to be better educated from an agency perspective of what unconscious bias is. And again, I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but I remember when I first came into recruitment, one of the first things you're kind of told to do, jump onto LinkedIn, have a look at the hiring manager's background. And that actually nowadays is unheard of, and you don't train in that way anymore. But you're right.
Yeah.
We're only ever presenting something similar as opposed to presenting something that's inclusive.
Yeah, and I think the unconscious bias is really interesting, because I think we do all have unconscious bias, and that's something which it does come into play, and it's something we do need to kind of address. And again, I think it's raising awareness of it as well, because it does exist. So I think it's around raising awareness of that.
And I guess also because you're constantly talking to your own organization and your own people about the culture, you're constantly reminding and challenging their status quo. So if a hiring manager by chance has got it so far ingrained because HR and the wider community are talking about empowerment for women to be able to succeed, they might just think differently about how they approach that particular hire, and hopefully become the norm, right? Is that the philosophy?
Yeah, and that's why I think it's great that it's spoken about so much, and even podcasts such as this, because and that's why I do think, as I said before, having those targets, they're very kind of dry, but actually if they're driving the right conversation and putting it more at the forefront of people's minds, then I think they're a positive thing. So it's really just around everybody being more aware of it as a challenge, and not, and I would never want to get to the point at all where somebody is hired just because of their background, their gender, whatever. But it is actually just making sure that people are more conscious when they're making decisions, whether that be recruiting, developing, whatever, that they are just more conscious of how do we drive that diversity, and recognizing the benefit of having that diversity as well.
Yeah, wholeheartedly. And I think what's really exciting is LinkedIn seems to really want to support the cause, because there are for all different industries, there are different challenges, and whether we're talking about diversity, full inclusion, and LinkedIn is an enabler to be able to give us a lot of information that is a live feed, and we can track nowadays the split in, let's just say, arguably Sussex HR demographic, how many of those are male versus female. HR stereotypically has 67% across Sussex is the female population. So we're almost facing the other challenge. How do we drive and promote male opportunities within that sphere, in that space? So it's really exciting, and we work really closely with LinkedIn, but I think from an employer point of view, that's something that is just going to become ingrained in your business.
Yeah, exactly. And then something which we've just started doing actually is that there's various tools online that do it, where you can put your job advert wording in there, and it sort of looks at it, actually, is it highlighting any particular words which are more focused on the particular gender in it, and it just highlights that to you. So the word challenge in a job advert is actually quite a male dominated word, so actually it just gender neutralizes those job adverts, which I think things like that is quite a new way, which I think is quite exciting.
I think it's exciting for sure. I'm slightly nervous the quality of the adverts that we're all going to start pushing out. They're just going to be really bland.
Yeah.
But look, hopefully at that point, that's where your employee branding takes over and organisations buy into what you do, not what's on paper. Because we all know an advert is generally fairly vague.
Yeah.
The role you might start in through, I mean, look at your own journey. The role that you started with First Central looks 10 times different to the business journey and culture that it is now.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So what I'd love to know is, if you were to meet your younger self coming into insurance, what would be your sort of one or two top sort of bits of advice in order to succeed in insurance?
I think if I look back and if I was speaking to my younger self, I think there's a big thing around be yourself. So I think I think this is quite typical when somebody starts their career. They kind of aspire, or they see somebody they think is really great at what they do, and they aspire and then try and actually mirror some of their behaviors. And I think you can massively learn and develop and kind of learn from other people. But for me, it's around actually be your true self, be authentic. Yes, you can always embed new behaviors and improve upon what you're doing, but don't try and change who you are, because also I think it's tiring if you're trying to be somebody you're really not. I think it's quite tiring. So I think actually it's around be yourself, but really recognize where you add value as well. So one of the key things, and again, some of probably what I'm going to say might be a bit of a generalization, but some of it is based on kind of reading and things I've experienced myself as well. But typically women do have kind of these ideas of self-limiting beliefs, and I think that's something which I probably struggled with a bit in some of my earlier careers, thinking about, so when I was offered promotions, even thinking to myself, can I do that, the next roll up, can I do it? And I did take the opportunities, and I think that's something else I would say to people, is just make sure you do be bold, take some of those kind of things which are outside of your comfort zone. But just that there are those self-limiting beliefs that women, again, men have them as well. So it's trying to recognise you have got those self-limiting beliefs, but don't always let them win. Mm-hmm. Actually try and talk yourself, or talk to, that's something else I think is absolutely key, is to have a real strong network or mentor or coach or somebody you can have those conversations with, which is like, actually, I'm not sure I can do this, or I'm struggling with this presentation coming up, whatever it might be, that you can talk that through with someone, and you can then think, no, I can do this and I will do this, and you then come out in that much more positive frame of mind. I think is a real key thing I have learned over my leadership journey.
I love that, and I think that piece about mentoring is so incredibly important. I think it was Deloitte that recently published what the younger generation wanted from their employees, and it wasn't about flexibility, it wasn't about money, but it was that leadership support, development, and it all kind of alluded to a mentoring program. They want mentors to be able to support their journey. And the fundamentals are: do we have enough women within insurance or FS more broadly? Do we have enough mentors publicly out there, at least in the Southeast? I can't say I know all too many
No.
that put themselves out.
And I think that's one of the other kind of potential barriers for females progressing within their company or within the insurance industry, is that, as you say, that they're more the role models or sponsors, whatever might be, those senior female role models are more limited than there are males. So therefore there are kind of less of those female mentors. Again, I would say to people though, over my career, I have had male mentors as well, and I think and that's been really productive as well. So I don't think you just have to go for a female mentor if you want to be a female leader in the insurance industry. Reach out to kind of your male network as well, and they do bring something else. So again, they will bring a different diverse thought pattern to what you've got. But I do think it is a challenge, and I would therefore encourage any kind of senior females to be mentors, because also I am a mentor internally, and I think it's great development as well. After I've had a mentoring conversation with one of my mentees, I come away thinking, oh, actually I could have said that differently, or I could have done that differently. So I think it's great development to be a mentor as well.
Absolutely. Again, it's a bit like the L&D digital topic. I could probably spend another 10-15 minutes talking about that, but look, I think that probably wraps it up quite nicely. I think there's definitely some value add, some takeaway points from my perspective, certainly from an agency and supply point of view, and how we work with wider organisations, just understanding the different nuances within the industries. I think it's going to be really, really important moving forward. If anybody is listening that wants to reach out to you, Jo, because they're interested about the business, or they follow the journey, or they want to ask you bits of advice, if you don't mind, is there a good way that they could get hold of you or sort of contact you yourself?
Yeah, it's fine. So I'm happy to, my LinkedIn is open, so if anyone wants to contact me on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy for coffee whenever we can get together for coffees, or chat over the phone, or whatever, because as I said, it is something I'm really passionate about, and there's a lot of other topics which I could talk to you all day about as well. So but if anybody does want to get in touch, talk about what we're doing as a company, what I think the wider industry is doing, or share any ideas, more than happy for them to get in touch.
And I think that the harsh reality is we've only just touched on the success of First Central this year. So by all means, if anybody's listening, jump on their page, look at the story. It is really interesting. From a recruiter point of view, there's loads going on over there, so it's quite exciting. But look, Jo, thank you so much for giving me your time today, and sharing your advice.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're more than welcome.